Welcome back everyone, Professor Cameron here. And what we're going to be doing this week is we're going to be going over what we call non-standard drawing views. So what we're eventually going to do is we're going to model this part and then we're going to create a part drawing. Now, like we've talked about, when we create a part drawing is we have our front view, our top view, our right side view, our standard orthographic views. However, there are situations where those orthographic views might not fully illustrate the entirety of the part, or it won't make it as clear as possible. So for that, we have auxiliary views that we can put in. Now we're going to talk about those in our next video. What we're going to do in this video right now is just go ahead and get this part modeled. Now, this part should look pretty familiar to most of you guys. This is very similar to the pulley that we modeled in CAD-CAM when we did that pulley assembly project. And we're going to model this pretty much the same way. So what we can do is we can go ahead and create a new part file. And just like we do whenever we create a new part file, is we want to set our units. So we're going to come down here and make sure we're working in inches for this. After that, we're going to go ahead and create a sketch on our front plane. Now, since we're going to end up modeling half of this wheel, revolving it, and then mirroring it, what we're going to do is we're going to put in some guidelines. For that, we're going to come up here and grab our line tool, but from the drop-down menu, we're going to select the option called center line. We're going to put a center line going straight up, and then we're going to put a center line going straight out to the side. Now, which side, it doesn't actually matter. You'll see why in a second. And that's good. Before we continue, we want to select each of these lines, and we want to make sure that they're perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal. And you can see that mine are based on the relations that are present. What we also want to do is make these lines infinitely long. They're reference lines, so the length doesn't actually matter. So we might as well have them as long as possible. We're going to select on each line. We're going to select infinite length. And then if we don't fix these, Solidworks will read these lines as underdefined. So we're going to select fixed as well. I don't like to use that fixed tool or relation often, but this is a perfect application for it. We're going to do that same treatment to the other line. We're going to make it infinitely long. And then because we can't dimension this because it's infinitely long, we're going to fix that as well. And there we go. We have our reference lines set. So what we can do now is we can actually start to sketch our wheel. We're going to grab our regular line tool this time. We're going to start on this vertical center line, but above the origin. And we're just going to trace out our shape here. And that's going to look something kind of like half of an eye, or I don't know, like a C shape. Right like that. Now once we have this, we can go ahead and start to dimension it. Now I'm not going to call out each dimension individually. What I'll do is I'll dimension each one and you guys can follow along on your own. I will mention one thing though. When we dimension this, we are not going to dimension the radius. So if we place a dimension from the bottom, from this center line, to the bottom of our part, it will allow us to dimension the radius. If we take this dimension and drag it down below this center line, boom, right there. What it's doing is allowing us to dimension the diameter. This is how we want all of our dimensions to sit for our height. We want to dimension the diameter. So that's all of our heights set. No, I'll clean this up so it's a little more apparent for you guys which is which. There we go. And then as far as the height is concerned, or I'm sorry, the width. Alright, and that looks pretty good. So once we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to revolve this 360 degrees. For that, we're going to go to Feature, and then Revolved Boss Base. What it's asking us for is to select a center line to spin this around. That is going to be this horizontal center line right here. And we can click OK. And that's going to spin it 360 degrees into something that looks kind of like a cake pan. Once we have this, we can copy the right half over to the left side. For that, we're going to use the Mirror tool. We're going to come up here and select Mirror under our Features tab. Mirror Face. This is the surface that we're going to copy everything over about. This is going to be this large flat backside surface. And then Features to Mirror. We only have one feature, the Revolve, so we can click anywhere on our part. That looks good, and we can click OK. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put in those lightning cuts inside of our pulley wheel. For this, we're going to select this surface inside here, inside this rim, and we're going to create a sketch on it. What we're going to do is we're going to grab a circle. We're going to start it right here at the origin, and then just draw it out so that it's roughly this size. We are going to have a line segment that starts at the origin and goes straight out to the side. And we're going to have another line segment that starts at the origin and comes up here to meet this circle. These are reference lines for us. These are not going to compose an actual element of our cut. As such, we want to select on each one of these lines and mark them for construction. So we're going to do that for both of the lines and the circle. We do this so that Solidworks knows we don't intend these to be part of our cut. If we didn't do this, Solidworks would get grumpy with us and try to cut these out, or at least give us an issue when we tried to cut them out. Once we've done that, we can grab just a regular circle tool, put it on this line where it meets the circle, and then just draw out a regular circle. Now when it comes time to dimension this, we're going to dimension the angle between these two. We're going to set this angle to 30 degrees. We're going to dimension the diameter of the big circle at 2.5. And then we're going to dimension the diameter of the circle we actually want to cut out at 1/2 of an inch, 0.5. Now once we've done that, our sketch is fully defined, and we can cut this out with a through-all cut. Right like that. Now we're going to have several of these. Rather than draw each one of those individually, what we can do is we can pattern it. And that's where we draw one, and then just tell Solidworks how many times we want to copy this over. To do a pattern, what we have to do is go to this eyeball here. And from the drop-down menu, we want to turn on View Temporary Axes. That should give us an axis right through the center of our pulley wheel. Next, we're going to come up here to Linear Pattern, and from our drop-down menu, we're going to select the option called Circular Pattern. Where it says Direction 1, what we're going to do is we're going to select this axis right here. That way, SolidWorks knows we want to pattern our hole around this axis. For features in this first box here, we're just going to select our hole. Right like that. Now this looks a little cluttered. What we're going to do is we're going to turn this instance here down. There we go. And what it's doing is it's copying that hole as many instances as I specify. I can do 5, 6, 7, 8, as many as I need. What we're going to do is we're going to set this to 6 instances. We want to make sure that this says 360 degrees, because what it's saying is it wants 6 of these equally spaced in a 360 degree ring. And that looks good. That's exactly what we want. So we can go ahead and select OK. And that pattern is complete. All we have left to do for this is to set our material. So we're going to come up here to Material, and we are going to set this to AISI 304. Now in our next video, we're going to run through the process of creating a drawing from this, and then putting in what we call a cross-section view. And we'll talk more about that at that time. But if you guys have any questions on this model, please let me know. And as always, have a nice day.